Envy is one of those emotions that we rarely admit to having, yet it shapes so much of how we think, act, and see ourselves in the modern world. You see a friend buying a new car, and you smile, but deep down you feel a sting. Someone posts a picture on social media of their perfect vacation, and suddenly your own life feels less exciting. A co-worker gets the promotion you thought you deserved, and instead of celebrating, you quietly resent them. Envy and comparison have been part of human nature since the beginning of time, but in today's age of constant exposure to other people's lives, they have reached new heights. And yet, the ancient Stoics faced the same inner battles we face today, even without Instagram or flashy cars, because envy is not about objects, it is about the mind. And the Stoics, with their radical wisdom, had a way to defeat envy and comparison at its very root. If you think about it, envy is a silent admission that you believe someone else's life is better than yours, and comparison is the habit that fuels this belief. When you compare, you give your mind over to the illusion that your worth depends on where you stand against others. But the Stoics saw through this. They knew that as long as you measure yourself against someone else's fortune, fame, or possessions, you will never be free. Seneca, the Roman Stoic philosopher, once wrote, "It is not the man who has too little that is poor, but the one who hankers after more." That single line is a dagger aimed at envy itself. It reminds us that poverty is not the absence of things, it is the endless hunger for what belongs to someone else. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor, faced envy on a level most of us can't even imagine. As the ruler of Rome, he was surrounded by senators with more wealth than he had, generals with more popularity, rivals with louder voices. And yet, in his private journal, Meditations, he reminded himself, "Do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit." He knew the trap. To constantly look sideways at others is to lose your own direction. Envy doesn't just make you bitter, it steals the only life you have by dragging your eyes away from your own path. Epictetus, born a slave, could have spent his life consumed by envy. He had nothing, while others had everything. Yet his philosophy was radical. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Here lies the Stoic cure for comparison. You are rich the moment you stop needing what others have. You become unshakable the moment you realize that happiness doesn't come from outrunning others in some imaginary race but from mastering yourself. Let's think about how envy works today. The modern world is engineered to provoke it. Social media is not a tool, it's a theater of comparison. Every swipe reminds you of someone thinner, richer, more successful, more beautiful, more admired. And yet, the Stoics would laugh at this spectacle. They would remind you that you are seeing only the surface, never the whole. Seneca once observed that we are always complaining that our lot is hard, but it is only because we compare it with others, not because we weigh it fairly. You see the smiling photos, but not the hidden struggles. You see the car, but not the debt. You see the marriage proposal, but not the silent fights. Envy is built on illusions, and Stoicism is the art of stripping illusions away. When you compare yourself to others, you surrender the most precious thing you own, your mind. You make your happiness dependent on external circumstances, on things outside your control. And what is the first principle of Stoicism? Control what you can, accept what you can't. Envy violates this principle. You cannot control another person's success, beauty, or luck. You cannot control the hand fate dealt them. So why poison yourself by obsessing over what was never in your power to begin with? Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, it is not the actions of others which trouble us, but our own opinions of them. The comparison is not in their car, or their house, or their job, it is in your judgment of yourself against them. Change the judgment, and the envy dissolves. Now, someone might argue, but envy motivates me. Comparison pushes me to do better. The Stoics would warn you against that trap. True growth doesn't come from envy, it comes from virtue. If your progress is fueled by jealousy, then even when you win, you lose. Because no matter how far you climb, there will always be someone higher. If you build your happiness on outshining others, you build it on sand. The Stoics believed in ambition, but ambition rooted in character, not in competition. Epictetus urged his students, first say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do. Notice the difference. He doesn't say, look at what others are, then try to beat them. He says, define yourself, then pursue it. Stoicism transforms ambition from envy into excellence. But let's be honest, it's not easy to stop comparing. The habit runs deep. So how did the Stoics train their minds against envy? First, they practiced gratitude. Gratitude is the enemy of envy. You cannot be grateful and envious at the same time. Seneca often reminded himself of the simple blessings of life, food, health, friendship, the breath in his lungs. Marcus Aurelius wrote daily about the fortune of waking up alive, of having the chance to live one more day. If you begin each day counting what you have instead of what you lack, envy finds no room to breathe. Second, the Stoics reframed success. They defined success not as wealth, status, or recognition, but as living in accordance with virtue. Virtue meant wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These qualities are not in competition with anyone else. Your courage doesn't diminish when someone else is brave. Your wisdom isn't smaller because someone else is smart. Your justice isn't weaker because someone else is fair. Virtue is infinite, it grows by practice, not by comparison. When you root your worth in virtue, you escape the endless ladder of envy. Third, the Stoics practice memento mori, remembering death. This may sound dark, but it's liberating. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Think about how envy shrinks under the weight of that truth. Would you still waste time comparing houses, cars, followers, or promotions if you remembered that death comes for all? The rich man dies. The poor man dies. The famous are forgotten. The obscure are forgotten. Envy vanishes when you see the end clearly, because it reminds you that life is too short to measure yourself by someone else's fleeting possessions. Fourth, the Stoics practiced control over desire. Desire fuels envy. You want what others have, so you compare yourself against them. But Epictetus taught, freedom is not achieved by satisfying desires, but by eliminating them. Imagine being free from needing to compete. Imagine the peace of not caring that someone has more. This doesn't mean you stop improving yourself. It means you improve for the sake of excellence, not out of jealousy. When you cut the root of desire, comparison no longer controls you. And finally, the Stoics sought perspective. They reminded themselves constantly of how small we all are. Look up at the stars, Marcus Aurelius said, and remind yourself of how vast the universe is. Suddenly, your neighbor's promotion or your friend's vacation seems laughably small. The Stoics zoomed out until envy dissolved in perspective. What is the point of resenting someone else when both of you are specks on a floating rock, destined to vanish in the blink of cosmic time? So, How does Stoicism defeat envy and comparison? It does so by attacking the very illusions that sustain them. It shows you that envy is built on false judgments, that comparison is a misuse of your mind, that happiness cannot be measured against others, but only against virtue. It replaces resentment with gratitude, competition with excellence, and vanity with perspective. But let's imagine this applied directly to your life. The next time you feel envy rise, pause. Ask yourself, is this thing within my control? If not, let it go. Ask yourself, am I seeing the whole picture, or just the shiny surface? Ask yourself, does this really matter in the face of mortality? Ask yourself, what can I do right now to live with more virtue, regardless of what they have? These questions dismantle envy in real time. Here's the paradox. The more you stop comparing, the more people begin to respect you. Why? Because nothing is more magnetic than self-possession. The person who does not envy, who does not compete, who does not measure themselves by others, radiates freedom. And freedom is irresistible. People ignore the desperate, but they admire the content. They overlook the envious, but they are drawn to the serene. The Stoic who defeats envy becomes unshakable, and in a noisy world of comparison, unshakable people are impossible to ignore. So remember this, envy is not a weakness you have to tolerate, it's a choice you can unlearn. Comparison is not a prison, it's a habit you can break. The Stoics gave us the tools: gratitude, virtue, perspective, discipline. Use them, and you will discover what they discovered, that the richest life is not the one filled with the most possessions, but the one free from the chains of envy. And once you master that, you will never again measure yourself by others. You will live by your own standard, and that is the only comparison that matters.